quantum computers, which are a revolution in hardware, when they get together, watch out.
Faint cracks ran along the parchment's surface as soft blue light scanned across it, slowly turning ancient ink into lines of code. Quantum processors lit up, parsing symbols that were written over 2,000 years ago. On YouTube, creators rushed to declare that artificial intelligence had revealed forbidden truths, prophecies hidden in plain sight, codes predicting apocalyptic events. But under the surface, something felt wrong. The AI hadn't just translated the scrolls, it had changed them. Whole phrases vanished, others were reordered, and no one could explain why. Peer-reviewed scientists stayed silent while TikTok and Reddit lit up with theories. Have you seen those videos claiming AI decoded a prophecy? If you have, ask yourself, where's the actual evidence? Because what's missing is terrifying. The quantum AI that never existed. It all starts with a whisper that spreads like wildfire. You've probably seen it too, those YouTube videos with haunting visuals, ancient scrolls glowing under scanner lights, and an AI interface pulsing over the text like it's reading forgotten prophecy. The claim? A new quantum AI has just retranslated the Dead Sea Scrolls, and what it found, apparently, was nothing short of terrifying. Hidden messages, doomsday warnings, evidence of something non-human. But here's where things take a strange turn, because if you stop the video right now, open a new tab and search for Quantum AI Dead Sea Scrolls in Google Scholar, you'll hit a dead end. Nothing credible comes up, and not just in Google Scholar. Try JSTOR, RXIV, PLOS1, and even the official archives of the Israel Antiquities Authority. If this AI breakthrough really happened, if some cutting-edge machine truly retranslated one of the most sacred and controversial documents in human history, there would be a paper, a project, a name. But there isn't. The trail just vanishes. And yet, those videos feel so convincing. One of them opens with dark cinematic music and words like quantum resonance and entangled decryption floating across the screen. They splice footage of old scrolls with 3D renders of AI brains, neural circuits, and scientific-looking graphs. The narrator's voice stays calm and firm. Everything sounds important, and then, in the bottom right corner, you catch it. A soft little line that says, "This content may include rumors and fiction." There it is. The quiet admission that none of it is real, tucked away where most viewers won't notice. But by then, the damage is done. People walk away believing they've seen evidence of a lost prophecy, when they've actually watched a sci-fi trailer dressed up like a documentary. That's how the myth spreads. It mixes real technology with exaggerated claims and just enough technical language to short-circuit skepticism. And it's clever, because most people don't stop to ask, where did this AI come from? Who built it? What's its training model? Has it been peer-reviewed? Instead, they see flickering symbols and redacted scrolls and assume there's something powerful being hidden. But if you push past the noise, there is real AI work being done on the Dead Sea Scrolls. And it's even more fascinating than the fiction. Back in early 2024, a group of researchers from the University of Groningen and Tel Aviv University published a peer-reviewed study that used artificial intelligence to examine the Great Isaiah Scroll, not to predict the end of days, but to figure out how many scribes actually wrote it. At first glance, it looked like a single author had copied the entire manuscript. However, the AI detected subtle variations in the way individual letters were written, tiny inconsistencies in shape, slant, and pressure, details no human eye would catch, revealed that two scribes had worked on the scroll together. That's the kind of work AI is doing in this space. It's precise, careful, and designed to answer real archaeological questions, but it's not flashy. It doesn't make for a terrifying YouTube title. And it definitely doesn't get millions of views in 2 days, which is exactly why the fake quantum AI story took off. It sounds cooler, it feels bigger, and in the age of algorithms, what feels real spreads faster than what is real. But there's a cost to that kind of storytelling, because while people are busy chasing ghost machines that rewrite scripture, they're missing the fact that real AI is uncovering things no one ever expected to find. So, if quantum AI is just smoke and mirrors, What does the real machine see when it looks at these ancient texts? Meet Enoch, the real AI revolutionary. While everyone was busy chasing ghost stories about a so-called quantum AI, a real breakthrough was quietly unfolding inside a lab at the University of Groningen. There, a small team of researchers was building something that didn't just look impressive on screen, but actually worked. A machine learning system called Enoch. No swirling graphics, no biblical glow effects, just raw computing power trained to do something even ancient scholars couldn't pull off. Not translation, but time travel through handwriting. Enoch isn't interested in what the Dead Sea Scrolls say. It doesn't translate Hebrew or interpret prophecy. What it does is far more technical and, in many ways, more powerful. Enoch analyzes the micro-patterns hidden in each scribal stroke, slight tremors in a pen, the angle of a loop, the tension in the hand, and from those microscopic quirks, it reconstructs something humans could never guess with the naked eye, exactly when that writing happened. It works a bit like forensic handwriting analysis, but on another level entirely. Think about your own handwriting. How you wrote when you were 10 is wildly different from when you were 20, or even last week. That's what Enoch looks for. It was trained using thousands of Hebrew inscriptions dated across several centuries. Through that database, it learned how certain scribal features correspond to different time periods. Then, it applied those insights to the Dead Sea Scrolls. The result? A 79% accuracy rate in dating fragments compared to traditional paleography. That figure might not sound cinematic, but in the world of ancient manuscript studies, it's groundbreaking. If you can accurately date when a scroll was written, you will suddenly get a timeline of religious, political, and social change down to the decade. And that opens up a much bigger mystery. For decades, scholars debated when certain scrolls were actually composed. Were they pre-exilic? Were they scribal copies of older oral traditions? Or were some of them penned during the rise of different Jewish sects? Enoch started giving answers that shook those assumptions. In one study published in PLOS 1, researchers used Enoch to confirm that the Great Isaiah Scroll had not one but two scribes. That might sound small, but the implications are massive. Two writers mimicking each other's style so closely that only AI could tell them apart suggests an institutional process, not a lone prophet copying divine words, but a team, maybe even a scriptorium, producing texts. Enoch started uncovering patterns that lined up with political events too. Scrolls, once believed to be older than the Roman occupation, were sometimes revealed to be newer. That means interpretations based on their assumed antiquity could be completely off. This means that Israel's own national story, which is rooted in those texts, might need serious revision. Even the European Research Council called the development a time code that could rewrite history. Now, compare that to the viral videos claiming AI found proof of an alien language embedded in the scrolls. Those claims don't come with footnotes or funding. Enoch does. It's backed by peer-reviewed science, grant money, institutional review boards, and publication in academic journals. And unlike the fictional quantum AI, Enoch isn't trying to make you believe in prophecy. It's trying to show you the truth of human hands. The software can even recognize pressure patterns, the kind of thing that changes when a scribe gets tired or anxious. Imagine reconstructing a political uprising because the writer's ink pressure shifted after a change in leadership. That's the level Enoch is operating on. And yes, that 79% accuracy might climb higher as the model improves. So, while internet lore was busy spinning tales of divine warnings and cosmic secrets, Enoch was scanning, learning, and quietly redrawing the timeline of biblical history, not by cracking encrypted messages, but by decoding the tired wrists and careful strokes of human writers from 2,000 years ago. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. One of Enoch's earliest discoveries didn't come from a scroll. It came from something that looked ordinary. It smelled awful, and it led to a finding no one was ready for. The 70-year-old mistake that changed everything. In the 1950s, in a cramped room filled with ancient parchment, flickering desk lamps, and well-meaning scholars who believed they were preserving the past, the Dead Sea Scrolls had just been unearthed. Excitement buzzed through the archaeological world like static in the air. These texts, being thousands of years old, were fragile beyond belief. They were crumbling with the lightest touch. To save them from decay, researchers had to apply what they thought was a simple fix. They coated the scrolls in a thin layer of castor oil. The intention was noble, but the result? This mistake was so significant that it would skew our understanding of biblical history for over 70 years. The problem wasn't obvious at first. The scrolls looked preserved, stable, almost glossy. Scholars went on to scan, transcribe, and eventually radiocarbon date them. But what no one realized at the time was that the castor oil had seeped into the fibers, and oil, as it turns out, is a nightmare for radiocarbon dating. Because castor oil is derived from modern plant material, its carbon signature distorted the scrolls' actual age, making them appear much younger than they were. The contamination buried a truth that wouldn't surface until decades later. Now, fast forward to the 2020s. A team of scientists began to question the inconsistencies in the scrolls' dating. Why did some scrolls appear to be from completely different time periods than their linguistic or paleographic styles suggested? Why did the dates not match the historical events the scrolls described? It wasn't until someone finally looked at the preservation process that the answer emerged: castor oil. That seemingly harmless decision back in the 1950s had altered the cells at a chemical level. Removing that contamination became the next scientific frontier. The process was delicate, requiring new solvents and non-destructive testing methods. Researchers from institutions like the University of Groningen and the Radiocarbon Dating Lab at the University of Arizona developed empirical techniques to isolate and extract the oil. Only after years of testing and cautious experimentation did they finally succeed. And when they reran the carbon dating, the scrolls aged by decades, in some cases by more than 100 years, and that changed everything. Scrolls once thought to be from the Roman era were now clearly pre-Roman. Texts that scholars had linked to early Christianity were suddenly too old to be connected. Even the timeline of Jewish sectarian movements had to be redrawn. What seemed like theological commentary turned out to be prophecy. What had been dated to the era of Herod the Great now echoed centuries earlier. Whole narratives collapsed. This revelation didn't just disrupt biblical archaeology. It reminded scientists, historians, and audiences like us of something much bigger. It reminded them that even the best-intentioned actions can cast long shadows. It became a symbol of how scientific error, left unchecked, can harden into accepted truth. And ironically, it mirrors what we saw with the fake quantum AI headlines. One viral claim, repeated often enough, can take root, and when no one checks the source, it becomes canon. But this wasn't a YouTube hoax. This was hard science correcting itself. A 70-year-old mistake was finally reversed through rigorous testing, peer-reviewed scrutiny, and a willingness to ask the uncomfortable question, what if we got it wrong? That question opens a door, because once researchers had the scrolls' real dates, they noticed something else. A pattern, a particular set of texts suddenly aligned with an era of mass unrest, political instability, and violent religious purges. And at the center of this was one of the most disputed books in human history, the Book of Enoch. But what was hidden in that book? And what did Enoch AI find when it reanalyzed those newly dated texts? The Book of Daniel Bombshell. When scientists recalibrated the radiocarbon dating on the Dead Sea Scrolls fragments, they didn't just correct a minor footnote in history, they cracked open a theological earthquake. Among the fragments, the ones linked to the Book of Daniel stood out like a flare in the dark. For decades, biblical scholars agreed that these fragments belonged to the mid-2nd century BCE, around 160, give or take. That timing always supported a certain theory that Daniel was written well after the events it supposedly predicted, and that its so-called prophecies were really historical reflections dressed up as visions. But then something strange happened. When the scrolls were reanalyzed using freshly cleaned samples, finally rid of the castor oil that had muddied the data for over 70 years, the dates shifted. And not just by a few years, The new results pushed the fragments back to around 230 BCE. Now, if you're not deep in the world of biblical studies, that may not sound like a big deal, but in this context, a 70-year difference is seismic, because it means these fragments were possibly written within a generation of the events they describe, or even before, and that puts the entire foundation of Daniel's interpretation under pressure. For years, the dominant scholarly view leaned hard into the idea that the Book of Daniel was a retrospective piece of writing, something more like a historical editorial than a genuine prophecy. The logic was simple. If it was written after the events, it wasn't predicting anything. It was just poetic license. But if the fragment is older, if it existed even before the Seleucid persecution and the rise of Antiochus IV Epiphanes, then that assumption collapses. The Book of Daniel suddenly steps out of the realm of clever fiction and into the dangerous waters of real-time commentary, or, depending on your view, actual prophecy. Either way, the implications are massive. Biblical literalists may see it as confirmation of faith. Secular scholars, on the other hand, now face a thornier puzzle. What was this text doing, circulating so early, and who exactly was reading it? And it doesn't stop there, because if Daniel's dating has shifted, it raises uncomfortable questions about everything else we thought we knew. What about other scrolls? Other timelines? How many assumptions are sitting on top of bad data? Suddenly, that 70-year mistake back in the 1950s feels less like a harmless academic error and more like a domino that just took out half the bookshelf. Of course, not everyone agrees. Some scholars argue that the radiocarbon readings still leave enough room to maintain the old theories. Others say the content of Daniel still reads like a political allegory aimed at 2nd century Jews under Greek rule, no matter when it was written. But the debate has been reignited, and this time, it's not just confined to university journals. It's spreading through YouTube, Reddit, and TikTok comment threads, and sparking new interest in one of the most controversial texts in human history. So, whether you're religious or not, or see prophecy as divine or poetic, this shift matters. Because the moment we started scrubbing away the oil from those ancient scrolls, we uncovered more than parchment. We unearthed the kind of academic tension that can shake institutions. And just like that, one tiny date stamp pushed us to rethink centuries of biblical scholarship. But if the real discoveries are this wild, why are creators still peddling quantum AI nonsense? How we got here. It wasn't the scrolls that haunted scholars the most. It wasn't even the AI. It was something much quieter. The real terror didn't come from some cryptic code buried in desert stone. It came from how easily we chose fiction over fact. See, while real scientists were decoding 2,000-year-old ink strokes with painstaking accuracy, a made-up story about AI discovering a demonic curse in the Dead Sea Scrolls was racking up over 2 million views. And guess what? Most people believed the fake one. No one fact-checked it. No one even paused. They hit share before they hit think. Now, take a step back and look at the bigger picture. On one hand, we've got legitimate archaeological teams using precision radiocarbon dating and AI pattern analysis, literal years of labor, all to move us 1 inch closer to the truth. On the other hand, a 2-minute TikTok slideshow of spooky music and Photoshop scrolls with the word Satan burned in red letters across the screen. Guess which one got more engagement? And this isn't just some digital age accident. It's a symptom, a sign of what happens when virality outweighs verification. Our tools are getting sharper, smarter, and more capable of revealing hidden truths, but we're not evolving fast enough to handle the weight of that power. Here's what that means. The more immersive and powerful our tech becomes, the easier it gets to blur the lines between real discovery and algorithm-fueled hallucination. And if we don't draw that line ourselves, sharply, publicly, someone else will blur it for us. That's how conspiracies spread. That's how fake AI stories outpace real academic work. The irony? The same tech being used to fabricate ancient horror stories is also helping rewrite real human history in ways that are actually jaw-dropping, like Enoch, the AI that dated scrolls with nearly 80% accuracy, like the Book of Daniel fragments that could push back their origin by 70 years.
It's everywhere right now, unsurprisingly, because it touches on two hot-button things,
Yeah.
the Dead Sea Scrolls
Yeah.
and AI.
That's the real mystery. So, before you share that next video, ask yourself, am I spreading curiosity or confusion? Are we building knowledge or just feeding the algorithm a tastier lie? Because in the end, the scariest thing we uncovered wasn't buried in a cave. It's right here on our screens. So, fake AI gave us demons. Real AI gave us evidence. The difference? One spreads like wildfire, the other barely flickers. If this changed how you see the truth, drop a comment. And remember, the most terrifying revelation isn't buried in ancient scrolls. It's hiding in our modern lies. Stay curious,